Hello. I think it's working now. Sorry about that. Good afternoon. How are you this evening? Hello. Oh. Sorry. Sometimes before a stream there's lots of things to do. Nice to see you. To see you nice. Still stuff open here. Sorry, I just have to force quit stuff. I'm sorry, guys. You can't always do these things until you're online. So nice to see you, so welcome. I couldn't think of a title of the talk today, so it's not any title, so no subject. But before I start talking, I always like to sit in silence for 5-10 minutes. So let's start by sitting in silence. Hello. Just let me open it up in my dashboard. So we'll just do non-duality tonight. No subject, just non-duality. So what is suffering to me? Suffering to me is the identification with the personality structure. And the personality structure is a set of conditions that are social and genetic that arise in everybody's mind. And that includes the voice in your head, that includes choice making, that includes personal awareness. And all of that is being experienced. But what suffering is to me, when the energy is that claims it and says that is who you are, whereas actually that's part of who you are, but it's not who's actually experiencing. It's not the experiencer. It's an experience that's appearing in who you are. And suffering is when you identify with that. And when you identify with that, you lose yourself. And through losing yourself, you then look for yourself in a timeline that doesn't actually exist. So then you look for yourself in a daydream of you, and you're believing that your freedom comes in a future event, in a future moment, and you're always waiting to arrive at that moment. It's not that there's a problem with the thinking mind imagining the future. It's this energy which believes that you're going to arrive when this or that happens. Whereas there is no arrival. What you're actually looking for is right now. But when you believe that the arrival, that the place that you're looking for is in the future, it means that you become too attached to pain and pleasure, and too attached to the outcome of events and things and situations. So if you really believe it's your home, then you'll be too attached to your home. Or if you really believe it's your lover, then you'll be too attached to your lover. And then all of that creates lots of mental struggle and expectations and ideas about what you have to be and what you have to get. Whereas actually your home, what you're always looking for, is right here. It's what's happening. Right here. Right now. The thing gives me shocks. There. that's the end of that then. So who are you? So who you are isn't an object, it's not a thing. Everything that you think about yourself, so your name, your form, your behaviors, your choices, your personal awareness, your ideas, your money, your situation, all of that is something that comes and goes and is always changing. But what is it right here that doesn't change? There's something else that doesn't change here. But you can't see it, so this is why it's totally baffling to the mind, because the mind tries to see it. Okay, what is it that's looking? Who is the looker? But you can't ever find it because it's looking. So the mind that's struggling in front, like, where is it? Where is the looker? Is being watched, is being experienced. You can never turn around and look at the looker, but yet it is yourself. It is you. So therefore, there is a knowing of it. It's so personal. Like, I know that sounds weird, but it's so intimate, this empty looking and this sense of being. It's always been there. So when you were like 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, there was always this vibrant sense of being. And it almost feels like your essence doesn't age, even though you have lots of experiences and lots of different environments. You still feel like that same essence at 2 years old, or 5 years old, or 10 years old. And that never shifts. And that's who you are, but it's not something you can grab hold of. It's not something you can look at or imagine. So even in talking about it, anything that you're imagining about it is being experienced. And it's that experiencing that is who you are, that looking. But you can't see it. You can't ever find it. It's not a thing. But yet, because it's not a thing, that means the looking is in everything. So it's not a thing and it's all things. Even to say it's consciousness is like a way of our mind trying to intellectually digest it. But so if you want to say it's consciousness, then it has to be seen that consciousness isn't a thing. It's not a thing that you can grab hold of. What happens is it feels like your mind can split and you can somehow see consciousness or personal awareness, but you can't really. It doesn't exist, consciousness. There is looking, and the looking is appearing in all things. It's appearing with the sound of my voice. It's appearing with the sight of my face. It's appearing with the color of my hair. It's appearing with everything. If you ever think that you know who you are, then you don't know who you are, because you can't know who you are. You can only be who you are. You can't know it, because that would be a fragmentation of the mind. And there's something that knows that, so there's something that experiences that. So if you kind of feel like you know something, then notice that it's being experienced. That is being experienced. So who you are is a mystery. Is beyond words. It's not this or that or right or wrong or good or bad. It's beyond anything that you understand. It's right here. It doesn't move. Everything moves in it. It's absolutely timeless. It's absolutely empty of any quality of this world. It doesn't have space. It doesn't have time. It doesn't have past. Doesn't have future. That is time. It just is here, watching and experiencing itself. It doesn't care about good or bad. It is simply experiencing. And then it looks through a human that has all of these things. So the human has the ability to chronologically see time. The human has the ability to judge what is good and bad. But that's not you. That's a filter in which life is looking through, but it's not who you are. That's an experience. And when you solely believe that's you, there's so much existential worry that appears with that, and so much pressure put on that. Like, you believe it's your responsibility to find meaning, to find purpose, to do things, to be good. And notice how the seeking mind is always looking for who you are, like in this, in doing that, if I do this, if I do that. It always wants a remedy or a method in order to get to this, but you can't get to this. It just is here, present, beautiful, experiencing. It's not located, it's not limited, it's not small, it's not big, it's not white, it's not black, it's not good, it's not bad. It's everywhere and everything. It's looking. It's all the objects it experiences. And it's not a thing. And it's found in the object. So you think that consciousness or looking comes from inside the brain and then we look at. Whereas actually looking is in the appearances. It's in it. So then we've got this seeking energy that comes up. So seeking for things. And everyone will have particular patterns of seeking and what they're identified with. So some people will believe it's creativity, some people believe it's money, some people will believe it's love, some people will believe it's sex. And then there will become a fixation on that. And then and what you're fixated on is the actual release from seeking that it gives you. So the sex or the being creative, it's not so much doing that, it's that when you do it, you have this release of seeking. So your seeking momentarily stops, or stops in the moment that you complete it or you do something. You stop wanting to be somewhere else. So there's a collapsing into this moment. So you feel more present when you get the sexuality, when you get the creativity, when you get the house. You're suddenly like, you don't want to move into the future or try and avoid the past. You're here. And then the seeking stops, and then you're present, and then your mind thinks it's in the object, it's in getting the object. It's not a conscious thing, but that's what your body deducts, because what you want is home. So then your body deducts that that will give you what you want. Okay, we go to questions. I sometimes struggle to do a very long introduction. Like boop, boop, that's it. I'm sure there's so much I could say, but it just doesn't always appear. So let's see what questions people have. Yeah, lots of questions. That's great. Helps me. So thank you for your questions. It helps me. Hi, Lisa. You spoke about, this is from Praveen. Hi, Praveen. You spoke about that which is looking through this human form, and I'm identified with this form, believing this is who we are. But why are we not able to break this identification easily? Why is it so difficult? I assume it's so difficult, Praveen, because it's a habit that's gone on for thousands of years in humanity. And because it feels so real, like when it comes up, so this person that's always like, and this energy that's saying that's who you are, it feels so real. Like you have these images of what you've done and where you're going and what you're off to do tomorrow, what you're going to do next year. So you have these images and these feelings that that's you, and that's what's seen. So that's what you're seeing. So that's what you're seeing first before you see other people, that story of you. And so it's like a waking dream. It's so hypnotic that is somebody sitting here experiencing, and that's what everyone else is telling you are. So I presume it's also like an area in the brain that's like maintaining this illusion, and it feels very real and very strong and very convincing. The whole world is hypnotized by it. It's that seems who you are, like the story of you. But then it seems really ridiculous when you really think about it, because the story of you is never here. The story of you is always something that comes and goes. So when you really begin to contemplate this notion, you realize that that's actually ridiculous. It also feels so much like you because your essence, so your sense of being is tightly mixed with it. So that sense of being, which is what you feel like you are or who you are, is so tightly mixed with I am Praveen, I am American, I like pizza. Sorry to generalize that people in America like pizza, but that's what us Europeans think. They eat pizza breakfast, lunch and dinner. It's a joke, I'm being silly. So yeah, it is very convincing, especially when you've got emotions as well coming and playing into it. But it's not true. That's not who you are. Hello, Isabel. Hi, Tim. Fletcher. Hi, Lisa. Watching stream. Thank you. Pleasure. I'm in a 12-step program for children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families. I feel a lot of resistance to it when I feel I should be doing this and should be doing that more. Working the program requires effort, but I feel a lot of shame and guilt about my resistance to that. I feel like a jerk who doesn't want to leave his comfort zone. I feel like an asshole for being resistant to doing what I'm meant to do. Since I was a kid, I hate shoulds, but I don't know how to push myself out of my comfort zone and safely into the healing zone, where I can go deeper. What is real resistance, and what is God's will telling me? And what is God's will telling me? Wrong direction. So I presume it's a past pain which you're identified with. So there's a past pain arising, and unless we work together privately, I don't really want to push people too much to exposing themselves on the internet. But unless we were to really look into what that past pain is, then it's hard for me to say what it is. It's personal to you. I can give you some ideas so you can investigate. So you've got a story running where it could be many things. It could be that you want to remain abused, or you want to remain in negativity, or you don't want to heal, or you don't deserve to heal, maybe, or you deserve to be pushed down. It could be anything. I don't know. I'm just guessing. And so then when you're in a more positive environment, or environment which talks about your healing, then it causes a lot of dysfunction in you, like a lot of feeling of discomfort. It could also be that you were taught you weren't deserving of that or worthy of that. And then it maybe could manifest then as a dislike to shoulds, because it's something like you don't want to do, you've got a resistance to it, and then going against what your natural feeling is. It's not so much that you don't like the shoulds, it's going against what your natural, it's not a natural feeling, but what your feeling is, and your feeling is in a state of rejection. So the reason of that rejection could be multiple things, but there's something that doesn't want to do it. And that's really interesting, because you obviously realize that it's healing and you realize it has benefits, but you don't want to do it. And unless you deal with the core root of why you're resisting it, then you're still going to blame it on shoulds and should-its. I don't like it when someone tells me I should do something. That's really not the reason is. It's much deeper than that. That's just your excuse for it on the surface level. I don't understand what you mean. What is real resistance, and what is God's will telling me wrong direction? I don't know what way God is telling you wrong direction, because it sounds like you know that you would do better if you participated in the program. Could be trust. I remember when I was younger with like healing therapies and everything, I had issues with trusting people and trusting these systems, that they weren't going to take advantage, and opening up to them. Thanks for your question, Tim. Hi, Deanna. Hi, Lisa. Thank you so much. I wonder if you could help explain the beingness that is right here. I've had some experiences that have nicely shown me some sort of presence of something nice and blissful, usually on the right side of my self that kind of shows itself as bliss, like loving feeling. It waxes and wanes, but it's confronting. Does this sound like another experience of the person? What the heck is that? Thank you so much. So bliss is a side effect of shifts that can happen. Like the bliss in the body, that is an experience because you're experiencing it. And that's a side effect of the body. So when there is a moving back to who you are, this empty looking and this sense of isness, the isness is love, but it's not a love you can perceive. It's sort of, it's empty and it's residing there and it is there. So the bliss is a side effect, but it's something deeper that's happening. So what's happening is that there's more contact with that empty looking and that sense that you are, this is, it's happening. You're not dead, this is. Like, woohoo! But that's not something you can see. A lot of people say that your consciousness and that you can see the I amness. But actually the I amness and the consciousness are two sides of one coin, and they come together. And that sense of being is everywhere, and that empty looking is everywhere, and they're the same, they go together. This sense of existence and this sense that it's happening, that it's here, and this emptiness. So the bliss and all the nice feelings you feel in your body, to me, would be a side effect that's happening in the body and in the personality structure. And it's something that can be observed. So if it can be observed, you know that that's not who you truly are. But it most probably indicates that there's a shift happening beyond that. I wouldn't try to work this out or understand. It's more about just being yourself and allowing that to grow and to overtake. Thanks, Deanna, for your question. Hi, Nick. Hi, AR. Hello, can you talk about dreams? Some teachers say they do not dream, and some say they say the opposite. Do enlightened ones dream? Either Krishnamurti ji was saying that there are no dreams during sleep for him. Thank you. I dream, and I have nightmares, and I have nice dreams. I have all types of dreams. But I'm not an enlightened being. So you have to take your little buggy and go off and see the enlightened beings and ask them. Thank you for your question. Hi, Filippo. Hi, Lisa. I don't understand how it's possible that something that is not happening to you is happening in your brain. Thank you very much and have a good week. I don't understand how it's possible that something that's not happening to you is happening in your brain. That, Filippo, I'm sure when you wrote it, you thought that that could mean one thing. But to me, when I read that, it could mean so many multiple things that I could go so many angles to speaking about what you've said. So maybe you need to clarify it a little bit. Simin, hello dear. Hi Simin. Thank you, Lisa. Love you and love Khaleesi too. Hi Monique. Hi Lisa. To be able to understand what we are, there has to be an energetic shift, I've heard people say. Can you say something about this energetic shift? Thank you, love Monique. Yeah, it's beyond you, and you really don't need to make a big deal out of it because that will just become a new seeking thing for your mind. I wouldn't think too much about it, the energetic shift. Like it's more just being present to what's actually being experienced. So if you're feeling really contracted and really narrow, then just letting that into your experience and just being honest to that. Hello, sorry about that. My wire in my audio is a bit on the blink and comes out, so I don't know when that cut out. I was just speaking away. Thank you, Isabel, for telling me. That's great for telling me. Thank you so much. So I'll just start that whole question again. Sorry if you've heard it already. I'm so used to repeating this stuff so many times that I can just keep going and going and going. It's like, oh, I say it. So, okay, come on, Lisa, you can do it again. So basically, what are you asking me about the energetic shift? So basically, it becomes a new seeking habit for people, so it becomes a new thing, like I'm going to get an energetic shift and that's going to save my life and that's going to fix things, rather than it being money, rather than it being people, rather than it being events and situations, lovers, whatever you might think it is. It suddenly becomes about this energetic shift. And so it easily becomes a distraction. But I was also saying, just to repeat myself, that it doesn't mean that I shouldn't be able to speak about it. Like some people have said to me in the past, and I often veer away from talking too much about the energetic shift. But it is what it is. That is what happens. But just notice when your mind is longing for that and just try and be real to what you're experiencing. So if you're experiencing a longing for something else, realize that that's your experience. What your current experience is you're trying to reject what you're experiencing and you want something better, and notice that that's illusion, that that's not truth, and that doing practices and doing things to get to that energetic shift isn't going to save your life and fix you, because all of that is illusion. Who is that person that's going to arrive at a place in the future? So just see it for what it is, that it's not true that there is an energetic shift that you're going to arrive at. But equally at the same time, it is what happens. There is this energetic shift from being a limited person to no longer being limited, to being something small, to being everything. and it's not something that will make sense to you, and it doesn't look like something particular in the person. It sometimes can change the person and make the person seem happier and nicer and kinder, but it's not about that. It's beyond the person. So the next thing is that I'm not opposed to people helping themselves in the human world. So on the human world, but it's not that you do this work on the human level in order to help the personality. It's not about that person becoming enlightened or that person finally arriving. It's seeing that you've built up lots of negative thoughts and incorrect thoughts that are causing you a lot of pain. And it's just looking at that. So like if you had a broken arm, you go and mend that. It's working on ways to mend some of the illusions that you have and some of the conditions and genetics that you have. So if you've got lots of anger or severe depression or something, so you can look at that and you can deconstruct that. And I mean, I say this maybe to give people hope, or maybe because I don't know how else to say it, but I think that looking at that opens up the possibility for that shift to happen, because that shift can happen randomly. It can happen to people that are like deeply suffering. It has been known. But often what happens is it's a process of becoming more balanced on the human level and then being able to hear non-duality. Because if you're really suffering on the human level, it feels impossible to hear that which is beyond it, to remember that peace and that freedom that's beyond it. And so if you're just suffering, you just want to get out of suffering, so you've got like intense seeking going on, and then that really blocks everything, like pointing back to there is nothing looking here, or there is simply emptiness. It's like, what is this lady on about? And I can't really describe to you too much what the energetic shift is, because it's impossible. It's really like anything that you'd ever imagine. And it is spectacular, but at the same time, it's really ordinary, because spectacular is something that comes and goes in the personal world, and so it has got this awe to it, but at the same time, there's not an attachment to that. So there's not this obsession or holding on to that dynamic. But basically it becomes impossible for me to talk about. Like when I do talk about this, it feels like I'm just tripping myself up and not speaking correctly, because it's impossible to talk about that energetic shift. So that's my reply. Hi Praveen, I have another question. A really silly one. Human life, even though you say it is not who we are, sometimes something is happening here, good, bad, happy, suffering. It's eventful. But what you talk about, who we really are, and that never moves, doesn't seem very exciting. It sounds dull, where nothing ever happens. So why would I be motivated to break this identification? Of course there's a lot of suffering here. Of course there is a lot of suffering here. But that seems like a choice between suffering and dullness. It's not dullness, it's only dullness to the mind that's obsessed with things. So the human mind, and this is why de-picking the human mind seems to come with non-duality. The human mind is obsessed with things like shiny things, good things, money, houses, people, experiences. That's what the human mind wants. It's like consume. Things. So it's not dull, that's just the mind speaking. So that's when like the motivation comes, when there becomes less of you, when you becomes more settled, and you begin to taste who you are, you resonate with it, and you see that beauty of simply being, of experiencing. But when you're just identified with things and you're in suffering, then you can't hear that, and it does seem like, oh, what's the fucking point? Screw that. Let's get more things, consume. Let's do more things, have more experiences. Thank you, Praveen, for your question. Hello, Deanna. Thank you for clearing that up. Lots of love. Sorry, it's hard to express it. I meant this. Sometimes you say that our body appears in consciousness, which is not something personal. Maybe I'm too attached to the words, or I get them in the wrong way, but it seems paradoxical that your body appears in consciousness, that it's perceived from your body. Actually, I've realised how confusing my question is, but I hope it's clear for you. Many thanks. You think it's perceived by the body, but consciousness isn't looking through the body, actually. It just looks that way. Consciousness is actually appearing in all things. It just appears to be coming from an angle in order to have an experience, but consciousness is all things that appear. Consciousness is the looking, and everything is appearing in looking, the seeing, the body, the mind, the ideas, the room, the objects, everything is that. In order to have an experience, you have to come from a particular place. So that's why life apparently created, I mean, this is what they say in Hindu texts and Buddhist texts, is that the reason that life created two was so it could experience itself. And in order to experience itself, it has to look from one particular angle. If it looks from all angles, it disappears. So it has to divide, apparently, but there is no division. When you come down to the subtlety of experience, you realize there is only one energy. One, not two. Hi Tim, do many humans experience a great fear of death at the moment of shift from small personhood to everything in awakening? Yeah, I think a lot of people do, some people don't. There's no particular path, it's everybody's particular way. It's a pathless path. And then at the same time, there is no path, because whose path would it be? That's the end of the questions. You're doing well tonight. Hey Beth. What is the relationship between cause and effect and non-Jewishship? Is there one? Well, if you subscribe to the philosophy that life is cause and effect, then it means that one thing to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next things. So it means that there is no beginning to an action. So one thing leads to another. This is really beautiful. This is the freedom this is real freedom, this teaching. Because we all feel, or most humans feel, they're guilty. They've done something wrong, or they're to blame. It's a relative human experience to feel these, but most people are really identified with it and experience it to a great extent. But there is nobody that's guilty. But it's also really full on, because it also means that's the same for mass murderer, paedophile, like whatever you really hate in this society. It's one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. So there's no beginning of the action of the paedophile. And this is why there's so many great stories and films out there at the moment. Like, we're really getting into this concept in society, where a really great film doesn't just portray this big, bad, ugly monster in the film. It also shows the humanity of that person that does bad things, that there's nothing that's separate from it. It feels like there is a moment where we can choose to do things or not, but that's just an appearance, that's not an actuality. So you're presented with stabbing someone or not. I know that's quite dramatic, but it's not a personal thing. The stabbing person, the choice to do it. That choice that says, I'm going to stab them, has been a lead up of all events that happened to that point in time. So it's really important seeing that. So most of society believe in cause and effect, but they don't believe in non-doership. But if you really reflect on cause and effect, there is no beginning, there is no end to any action. All action is one action, like an ocean, like a wave coming up. It takes all of those particles of water to get that wave to come up and then to break down again, and then another wave to come up. And it's the same for all of this life. It's called like the butterfly effect. Like, this can only happen from the movement of all other things. It's beautiful. Yeah, karma, you could say, is cause and effect, because cause comes from effect. So to me, I always say that the karma is cause and effect, and some people argue that, but they say it's just effect, like it's the effect of someone's action, but the cause and the effect are the same. Like, it's like an endless line, and there is no personal karma. There isn't a person that is guilty. So sometimes the way karma is interpreted is that you have particular karma and you're guilty for that karma and you've got to free yourself from it. It's a helpful way to speak, to say that you have karma, but it's not actually yours. Your karma is all the other lives that came before you as well. It's not actually a personal thing. And then in this life, it seems to be, but it's not actually the way it is, that it's Beth's job to improve that karma. But all her improvements of it and everything that she does isn't her choices. That's also karma. The fact that she chooses to improve her karma is also karma. There's no free will. There's the appearance of free will. It's really intense, these things, because we're so conditioned of what good and bad is, and it keeps all of us in line. Like, there's nobody free of that. Like, if society took away all things that were good and bad, like that we determine as good and bad, like, what is it that you would do? You know, if it was taken away that it was bad to crash into someone's car and drive off and not give them money for it, and there was no concept that that was bad, would you stop and do that? It's not your choice at the end of the day, but it's conditioning. You're conditioned into believing that. So we have like a society. Like, and if you grew up and you were never conditioned that stealing was a bad thing, like in our society, we're not conditioned to grow up to believe that factory farming or what's it called? Non-fair trade products isn't bad. So we're not, my generation wasn't, the younger generation are being brought up to believe that's bad, but my generation isn't. So I know with myself, I try to recondition myself to not buy products that aren't fair trade. But it's not easy because I don't look at something instantly and then think about the suffering that's gone into that product, because I wasn't trained in that way. I was trained to see stealing as a really bad thing and littering as a really bad thing and being rude as a really bad thing. But these things like factory farming, I do have training in that actually to believe that is bad. But for me, fair trade, it's not a natural thing that appears in my brain when I'm shopping. But if we were brought up with that, then it would be like if any of us bought things that weren't fair trade, it would be like scandalous. It would be like robbing a bank or stealing somebody's wallet. It would just be like, you're a supporter of cruelty. And maybe there's laws against it. Like if people do that in the future, maybe they get a fine or they get put in prison or something. And then that would become so demonized in our mind and such a bad thing. But at the moment it's not, so everybody just kind of does it. The same with being gay. Like 200 years ago, being gay was considered punishable in a lot of societies by death more than likely. Whereas now it's like, who cares? Like, get over it. Just the older generation that tends to care, some of the younger generation as well. But we're getting over it. And so, you know, like 100 years ago, it was considered good to, you know, shout abuse at a gay person or be for them to be tortured or something and them to be imprisoned, and everyone was like, yeah, that's good. And now everyone's like, oh no, you can't do that, it's not PC, it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. And all of this is social conditioning. And if you take that off, like, it's such a freedom to take that off and just see that there is no good and bad, and that one thing is just happening from another to another to another, and there is no good and bad. Good and bad is a human concept which helps us live as a civilization together. It doesn't exist in the dog world. Khaleesi's conditioned to know it's bad to do poo-poo in house only because it brings her pain if she does, like I tell her off. But it's not, she doesn't have this concept of it. Humans are deeply plagued by this idea of good and bad, and they feel this eternal guilt for being separate, that it's your choice to do good things and to be a good person. Whereas there is no good person. Like all of you that are thinking you're a good person, which Lisa has a tendency to dwell towards that, it's a bullshit. There isn't a good person. There is humanity, which is a flow of things. And if any of you had the right circumstances, I'm sure that you'd be a court killer or a paedophile or a murderer. And I know that's really hardcore because you think, no, I wouldn't. I've got free will and I've got choice. But I assure you, if you get stimulated in a certain way, you would be. If you've ever seen Clockwork Orange, like they try to recondition him into being good. It's the same for being bad as well, or doing bad things. And there's also people that are genetically born into this life that have more of a tendency to be bad, but that's genetics. It's not social, it's genetics, but that doesn't make someone more bad. It's just a different way of conditioning. I went off on that a bit. Hi Simin. My friend asking me this evening, why do we exist at all? I can feel it deeply but couldn't say the beauty of experiencing this existence and being. Love you dear and thank you. Yeah. It's simply to experience. So if you really like deeply go into meditation and into yourself, you can feel this urge to want to experience. Like that's one of the first urges that come into life, is wanting to experience. It's wanting to be alive. So that's the first creation of our essence, is this desire to experience itself. Thanks, Simin. Hi, Lisa. Another question. Why does there seem to be looking through the eyes and an attachment to the body? I do not understand that. If there is just looking, why is there not an apparent looking from a chair or a window? Silly question, but this really confuses me. Yeah. Well, in your dream at night, why don't you dream that you're a chair that's looking, or a moon that's looking, or a sky that's looking? It's because the object has to be appropriate to that. So the object has to have the capacity to experience like this. Like a chair doesn't have a sensory experience. It doesn't have like a microphone and a camera. So it cannot be looked through. Like it all fits in apparent cause and effect and logic. And it all has laws of existence. Like it's not random, this life. So to me it seems really natural that humans and animals are having the consciousness, because they actually have sensory perception in order to experience. But then, having said all that, it's an absolute mystery, and God knows. Like, it's a happening. That's what we know. God knows why life isn't experiencing through a chair. My presumption is because it doesn't have any sensory perception, but I mean, it's all really miraculous. And if you take a trip of acid or some other hallucinogenic, then maybe the chair starts experiencing. The brain does funny things, and then you're looking from the chair. You turn into a chair. Oops. Hey Atul. I usually feel a deep urge to convey my spiritual thoughts with others. Sometimes I share, but mostly I suppress. By suppressing, I felt bad. Could you suggest any? But by suppressing, I felt bad. Could you suggest any solution? I would look at why it is that you want to share. So I'd just tap into that feeling. Like, what is it you're looking for? They just go really deep. Often we don't want to go deep into these feelings, because when we go deep into them, we don't get to seek anymore, or we don't get to play out behaviors which feel good to us. So it might feel good to us to share this with people because it validates our ideas. It's a release of energy and gives you endorphins sharing these ideas. And maybe you can be a teacher, maybe you can know things, maybe you can get power. There's all different types of things. And when you look at that and examine that, there can be deep resistance to it. No, I just do it because it makes me feel good. Because admitting it is very vulnerable, and it also collapses the game to an extent. Like often, it's more than likely in the heart, and it's more than likely that you want love from sharing. So then you stop yourself doing it, maybe because you feel shy or you don't feel good enough, but there's the urge to share, and then you pull it back with those sorts of thoughts. Whereas really my suggestion would be get deep into that chakra, into the heart, and get down to those bottom feelings that are saying, I want love, I want to be loved, I want to be part of the group, I want you to appreciate me. There is some intuitive feeling to share. Are you sure? I'm not looking to get anything back from sharing. Yeah, I don't know if I believe you, because are you sure it's not that you like the pleasure of sharing? Because from my experience, but it might just be my experience, is that there's no, I know it seems really ridiculous that I do all these talks, but there isn't an inclination to share. There's joy that wants to be expressed, but that could equally be expressed in singing or dancing. And to me, often when you want to express this verbally to somebody, if you're not being asked, it's different if you're being asked, if somebody asks you a question about it. But when there is an urge to share, it's something incomplete in you. But honestly, the mind really doesn't like to see that, because it's like with me with chocolate. You know, if I'm just about to have a nice chocolate bar and I'm all ready, and then someone says, you know, is it that good for you, or do you really need to eat that, or somebody questions it, it's like my fat mouth is like drooling for the chocolate, and it really wants the chocolate, and it doesn't want to be questioned. Especially as a man, like Atul, I presume you're a man, like sometimes people use fake names. Because I think there is more of an urge in a man to be a leader and to be someone that shares than a woman. I know that sounds really sexist, but it's my experience from doing lots of talks is that normally the people that try to take over my talks, which happens regularly to all speakers, is normally men. And it's normally men that preach at me non-duality. And it's to do with this deep urge to be a leader, and that masculinity, and to be loved and to be appreciated for what you are. And it's really hard to see, because it feels like absolute joy and beauty to share it, but that's because the seeking stops when you share it, and so it does feel like joy and beauty. Sometimes I felt there is a person which wants to share, then I just suppress, but sometimes it happens unintentionally. Yeah, but that doesn't matter. That could still be unconscious dynamics appearing from the body when it's unintentionally. And I was longer able to suppress it. It could be that it's just pure consciousness wanting to speak through you, but I find that it's really got nothing to say. Like, who you truly are has got nothing to say. But yet it doesn't resent answering questions, and it doesn't mind answering questions about that. I feel like you're trying to make excuses as why to share. go into the heart and feel what it is that you truly want from that situation. What is it that you truly want? Like really feel deeply into the body. But in order to do that, you have to really be able to feel the body to know what I'm talking about. A lot of the time people don't feel the body, so I'm assuming that you feel the body. And then when you feel the body, you can have that urge to want to speak about something, and then you can go into the heart area and you can see that underneath the urge to speak, there is an urge to fit in or to be loved or to be appreciated. Well, Atu thinks about that. I'm just going to go to Natalia. Good evening. Could you please back to this subject of 12-step AA or SLA or ACA, because these are the spiritual programs, and the aim, if I understand this correctly, is to realize who I am. But although I participate in these groups and it helps, at the same time I don't believe in it totally, and I don't know if that is kind of a resistance and will be good to make this program literally very serious. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know what your feelings are. It could be that you dismiss it because you're not fully committing to it. So you've got to go into your body and see which is true. Or it could be that everything isn't that serious in this life. Like even the path to liberation or the path to freedom is just what's happening. Like really, the life is teacher, not a particular program. So you just have to feel into your body as to what's true. Are you resisting the course by not committing to it or by not taking it that seriously? And that's a personal thing. But you have to know your body to understand these things. You have to have a good sense of what your body feels to then really feel that in the body and to really know what it is that you want or don't want. Frustrating. I can accept intellectually that my body is not separated from all the environment because, for example, the air and the sun participate to my existence as much as my heart, but my mind too is outside my body. Sorry if I'm too insistent and thank you again for your work. I didn't say your mind was outside of your body, I said consciousness. What you're doing is you're putting your mind, your thinking mind and consciousness together. But it is interesting because if we go to the mind and if we go to thinking, you'll also see that you don't know where thoughts are appearing. You've assumed that they're inside the body, but you don't actually know that. And is it that assumption that's making them feel like they're inside your body? So that's one thing. But the mind and consciousness are not the same thing. There is something that's conscious of the mind. And it's also conscious of the room, and you can't find it. It's not located. It's the actual experience. So in the direct experience, consciousness isn't anywhere. It's not inside or outside the body. It's in experience. It's in what's happening. So you think that there is something conscious in here of the world, but if you go to your experience, like where does consciousness end? Does it end here and the world begins there, or here, or here, or here? And then you'll notice that there isn't an outside of your consciousness ever. There isn't an inside and there isn't a start and an end to it. It's not looking from here or looking from there. It's your mind that's telling you it's looking from inside the head. That's the thought that's telling you that. But your actual experience isn't that. Your actual experience is that it's unlocated and not a place. At all. I understand, thank you. Oh, pardon me. Well, I think that's the end of the questions today, so I think I shall move on for the rest of my dinner, basically. Move on to my dinner. I don't think there's any more questions. Oh yeah, there's one. I feel for sure that when I speak too much about these problems, it's very tiresome. Thank you very much. Always listen to my body. I am learning this. This is, yeah. It can be very tiresome, like speaking about problems or listening to problems. But at the same time, there needs to be this detachment from always wanting good experiences, because that's what most of humanity's done, is it's not wanted to deal with heavy problems or difficult problems. So it's always pushed them to the side and not wanted to speak about them. What is the difference between awareness and consciousness? Everybody says it in different ways. There's no fixed non-dual language. To me, I say consciousness as the big consciousness, and then I call the personal awareness is this person that can move the camera and move the focus from the big toe to the outside world to your thinking mind. But a lot of other teachers call it different. Like a lot of teachers call awareness the big thing, and some call it consciousness. So that's the way I use it. So awareness is the movement of the lens. Like I can put my attention here, I can put it here, I can think about, I can put it in my thinking. And consciousness is that which is conscious of it and knows it. But enough for this evening. That's the end of the question, so we can end it there. I wish you all a very beautiful evening, and I shall see you again on Sunday at 6 p.m. French time. Au revoir.